What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we'll be taking a peek over here at the Bitcoin price chart, the altcoin market, and talk about stocks and all the crazy stuff that went on this week as we head into the weekend and the things that I'll be kind of looking for the price action for Bitcoin and for the altcoin market. It's been a great week. Prices have been green all week long, not just here in crypto, over there in stocks. And I wanted to show you some things I'm looking at for Bitcoin on the bigger kind of time frame in regards to retracements, what's happening with the US dollar, the DXY, and what's happening with the Bitcoin dominance. Are we about to see the culmination of events occur where we can finally go off into a retrace for Bitcoin? The Bitcoin dominance takes a plunge with the US dollar currency index falling at the same time. And all the meanwhile, the stock market still just holds itself, right? So we've had a lot of fear out there in the markets, but ever since early mid-June, we've been bouncing up here in the stock market. We'll come back to this in a minute. One of the reasons I actually held out so long on releasing this video today is I wanted to see how the stocks were going to end. As you know, it's been a crazy week. You had corporate earnings coming out there. You had the Federal Reserve, and then we had GDP, and we had more earnings. And well, the question was, well, how are we going to digest all that information here on a Friday? Turns out stocks did just fine here on a Friday as we've now closed out for the week with another nice green candle here on the Dow Jones. NASDAQ, which actually was able to take out the high that was set back here on May 31st. So on the NASDAQ, we're seeing the highest prices since early May. And a nice big green week over here on the S&P 500. But of course, the thing most people are watching for is what's happening with the crypto market, right? It's what Blockchain Backer is, what this channel is about. We're talking about cryptocurrency, right? So what about crypto, right? Bitcoin's still just hovering up in here, still not able to get out. It did like this little wick earlier this morning, which, makes it slightly different, but it was so fast, it clearly not able to get through, almost like a rejection, or was it just one entity that was able to make that happen in here? Essentially trying to get this structure to change up so that we're not looking like these ones in here, right? But we look to the stock market, and what were we seeing? We see that the NASDAQ has already gotten up above these prices right here. So we know the NASDAQ is already up here. We know the Dow Jones is like right around here, and the S&P 500, they're all right around here at this point. So into the weekend, seeing if we can get ourselves to catch up to what the stock market has been doing, and that we can break away from these structures and not come back down here and continue looking like all these things. And right now, we just didn't get an answer here at the end of the week. Kind of waited all day to see what we would get, and Bitcoin just stayed still all day, while the Dow Jones and the stock market did continue up higher. So stocks continued, but Bitcoin still just kind of stayed flat. But otherwise, it was an awesome week for the altcoin market. We saw a lot of altcoins have big weeks this week. But still, as we head into the weekend, it's about seeing this thing break out. And it's not just about because of this little thing right in here, right? What do we know is that, once again, we're above the 200-week moving average as we go into this weekend. So in about 48 hours, we'll get the weekly candle close over here on Bitcoin to see if it can actually close above the 200-week moving average. Still stuck. So we're going to have to wait to see how that ends up playing out in there. And a clear break to the upside obviously gets us to close the week above, and a pull back down obviously below. So it's not just like, hey, the structure just kind of looks like this thing too. There's some meaning in here too, right? 200-week moving average sitting in there, which still it's there at about 22,700. So that's going to be the watch throughout the weekend. Now, I was playing around with the Bitcoin price chart quite a bit today. Take this off the screen and flip us off log scale to look into what it was like when we kind of crashed down in here for Bitcoin back in May, June, and July of 2021, right? So if you remember during that time period, everybody was looking for one more dip down lower, right? That's the same thing we have going on down here. We got everybody looking for one more dip for Bitcoin. Of course, you see all the things out there, everybody pointing to all the economic data. And, the economic data isn't great out there, right? You got consumer savings down. You've got interest rates with the Federal Reserve. You've got inflation. You've got the housing market coming down. You've got tons of repossessions happening over there with auto industry. But it's like, oh, no, the market has to come down because of all those macro things. But if you look at kind of like what the narrative is out there for all of that, it's like, and then you buy that next dip. It's like, okay, so we're supposed to get one more dip because of all these macroeconomic issues, but that's the dip to buy and all the macroeconomic issues are going to go away? I don't think so. I mean, I do think the macroeconomic issues paint a really big picture for the long-term trajectory of the markets that, like I say, 4.236 extension on the Dow Jones isn't too far away. If the Dow Jones is lucky enough to even get a new all-time high, it's not by much, right? It's just a tiny, tiny fraction, and then right back on itself it goes. Be watching retraces and all that stuff. But anyway, that we have to have one more dip because of macroeconomic conditions. I don't think so. I think, we've had our own economic conditions in the cryptocurrency market that were enough, man. I mean, we had Three Arrows Capital, we had Celsius, we had Luno, UST, USDT depegging, all that crazy stuff has already happened in here that was not a product of the macroeconomic environment. But one thing I noticed that happened in here was how this has been of the same size of what occurred during this last fall that we had right in here before we ended up moving our way back up. And I'm going to point to this here in a second. But it's been interesting that the depths of this thing that we have fallen have been similar. In addition, if you kind of look at what was happening in here, right? And, the volatility in here was a whole lot more back in May and June of 2021. But structurally, they were very similar of what actually happened in here. If you look at these things, you could see that there was actually kind of like a trend breakout that happened in here. We broke out and then crumbled over on itself. That's really kind of the same thing that really kind of happened in here, right? You had like a trend breakout and then it crumbled over on itself. And with both those, they were kind of the same kind of just crumbling, falling, and we've gotten down to these same price levels after being the exact same distance. But I was just kind of like toying around with it to be like, hey, my thing is like we haven't had a retracement in this market, and that's really the thing I've been looking for. And I know that's the narrative I keep saying that's what I'm looking for a long time, and it just hasn't happened. But you can go look through all of the previous bear markets for Bitcoin. You can go look through every fall that you've ever had for Bitcoin throughout history. Bounces just happen, and we just haven't had a bounce here in this market, and it's something I'm obviously looking for. But I noticed that this was the same size, and I was like, hey man, what would it look like if we added on the other part of that, right? And you were like, okay, well, a bounce coming in here, right? Well, what about that, right? Would that make any logical sense to have some type of run back up into a retracement in here? And sure enough, this type of a run right in here, so put it right under. Where does it get you, man? It gets you right back into the retracement levels. Before then, what happens? You roll over and you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and it keeps going down and down. But I found it very interesting to see how this move has been. And I know a lot of people are looking for one more dip lower. I do remember that being the case back in here, back in May, June, and July of 2021. Absolutely nobody thought this was the bottom that was coming in here before it started moving its way up. And then I was recognizing the similarities of what was happening in here before this final leg came in. The magnitude of these falls is obviously different. Kind of break out and break down, kind of a break out and then break down. The magnitudes are certainly different here, but the entire length of the whole move in here was really of the same exact size. So I thought that was interesting to say, hey, if we kind of keep zigzagging with equal moves back and forth, where does it get you back to? It gets you back into the retracement levels. And, you could think to yourself from the macroeconomic conditions, just because the macro is so bad, it doesn't mean we can't go into retracements. But what does it mean? It just means we're not as strong anymore. We don't have the juice to send this thing off into new all-time highs, but to head back into retracements. And so if we head back into retracements, what is the thing that the market has done before? It's been that the altcoin market outperformed it. So is the market setting up similar to what would happen where the altcoin market could outperform Bitcoin in this situation? And that's where I come over here to the Bitcoin dominance. And this is something that in this channel, and you all who watch this all the time, we've seen this and studied it for far too long. It's almost become a frustration point at this point that the Bitcoin dominance has been clearly showing the similar structure of what happens before an actual breakdown comes in here. So you have kind of a similar setup happening over there on the price chart of what happens prior to a retracement. And then we have this setup happening here within the dominance of what does not happen. I see it all over the place, all over Twitter and everywhere, saying, hey, the dominance has to come up in here. What I used to see a whole lot of is saying, we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get our way up there. But at this point, that has been completely invalidated, right? It's looking way more like what we've been talking about in here, where you have an A, B, C, and A, B, C before the thing starts plunging on itself. So that would be the similar condition of what happened during the last time that the altcoin market really performed well during a Bitcoin retracement. And I just find it very interesting to see how this move has been in relation to that and how this kind of final ending ended up happening in here, just like we had back in 2021 during this time period. Different magnitudes of size, a whole lot more volatility happened in here. But even these kind of finishing moves in here were of the same size in here. And I know it doesn't look like it here. Our eyes kind of like do an optical illusion on us to show that those were of different size, but you could see they're very, very similar in here of what this ending ended up happening here. The only difference was this was way more volatile in 2021 compared to how it was here in 2020. And I don't know if there was something at play there because we were dealing with a whole lot of stuff then with Luna and UST. And I'm sure there were things at play of people trying to hold that price up back in here to prevent some type of liquidations from happening. Because as we saw, once this thing took itself out, what happened? Celsius went down, Three Arrows Capital, all those things went down. So maybe there was somebody holding this price up to try to prevent all that liquidation from happening. I don't know. I can only theorize that on why we didn't have so much volatility in here as we did last time. But either way, I thought that was interesting and that I would show that. This still does paint a bigger bearish picture for Bitcoin long term. This still would mean that, hey, all this is some type of retracement because we've been nothing but down with no retracement. Then what happens? You go on down, you go even deeper after that. But that's for another day. The thing I'm really looking for is, can we get our way back up here, please? And what would happen to the rest of the market in the circumstance of that occurring? And I think it would be pretty optimistic for the altcoin market. Still, stand by it. It would be one thing for me to stand by it just blindly and like ego checking it or being like stubborn about it. But with this setup here for the Bitcoin dominance, there's no other way. If somebody had to say, well, what do you think is going to happen with the Bitcoin dominance next? Very clearly, Bitcoin dominance is going to go down. Well, what does it mean historically when the Bitcoin dominance goes down? Well, it means that the altcoin market does really well. Well, what circumstances have happened in order for the altcoin market to do really well and for the Bitcoin dominance to fall? It's either Bitcoin's breaking out into a new all-time high or it's going back into a retrace. I don't think Bitcoin's breaking out into an all-time high. Maybe it does. I just don't think it is. Retrace seems possible. So I thought I'd show that to you. Play with it as you will. Of course, one of the conditions for that we've seen historically is that DXY would need to be falling, right? Or the US dollar currency index. I was just messing around with it and I was like, wait a minute. We've had a parabola over here on the DXY, and over the last week or two, we've actually broken this parabola. This thing has actually cracked on itself, which, as many of you know, we've seen the US 10-year treasury yield actually falling almost a whole percent in the past several weeks. And the thing is, the US 10-year treasury yield, it's not even 0.25% away from what the current federal funds rate is, which is 2.25% to 2.5%. It's sitting at 2.65% as we wrap up this week. That the bond market is saying, good luck with all of those federal interest rate hikes to the federal funds rate that you want to do, because bond market seems to be saying it ain't happening. Or as my wife hates it when I do that. It is not happening. At least that's what the bond market is saying right now. I don't know what will happen, but that's what it's saying right now. But if we were going to see a rise in crypto, what would you want to see? You would expect to see, whether you want it or don't want it, you'd expect to see the DXY falling. I thought it was real interesting to see the parabola starting to break on here, while at the same time, everybody became massively bearish. Everybody's looking for that one more dip, right? Just need that one more dip. But that was interesting that played out this week. So this week we saw a lot of stuff, right? We saw the DXY was losing its parabola, 10-year treasury yield working its way down even lower. A target, if this is a head and shoulders, 2.18%. That gets you below the federal funds rate. That's crazy. Dow Jones and stock market just continue to rip. Total altcoin market cap still bounced perfectly right off of that 200-week moving average. 11 consecutive weeks of green. We're now on our 11 consecutive weeks of red. Excuse me. That was horror. Do not mistake. That was not green. 11 consecutive weeks of red. We're now working on our 4th consecutive week of green, as we know, underneath a little bit of resistance here. So we wanted to see us get through there, but it was interesting to see it back at the all-time highs, really kind of the bounce, and right off of the 200-week moving average, still continuing some momentum in here. Thing is really just wanting to see some action come out of here on Bitcoin to get above those levels. But as we could see, got through the 200 on the 4-hour time frame, back test, but still, it needs a breakout in order to not be one of these. And hopefully throughout the weekend, we can get that. And then at the same time, closing still up here so we can reclaim that 200-week moving average that's in there. So TXMC gave me the prime script to do this, so we can do this on any time frame that we want. We can be looking at the 1-minute chart if we want to. We can see the 200-week moving average all the way down here, 1 hour daily, and of course weekly. We know where it's at right there. So see if we can really claim that over the weekend. Otherwise, it was a great week out there. We had a lot of action in the stock market. Stocks came in strong. They responded positively to everything. Corporate earnings, of course, were not great, but but the market already expected not great. It's just that they didn't get too massively surprised. The Federal Reserve came out, they did their interest rate hike as expected, but they said that they're going to start being more data dependent and that we're already back to neutral rates. So market liked hearing that they're not just going to be blindly raising rates, but they're going to be paying attention to data and knowing that they're not going to be doing anything for another 2 months. Then GDP came out, of course, recession. I think everybody kind of expected it. Now the question is, can the market rally with some strength after so much massive fear and see some type of retrace and rotation? And so throughout the weekend, really, it's just going to be seeing if we can catch ourselves up here with Bitcoin to the stock market. And the stock market sits right up in here for an equivalent pricing for Bitcoin, be up there near about $30K, $30,000. Otherwise, awesome week for markets in general, awesome week for crypto, awesome week for the stock market. And we can see that as we head into next week, one of the big questions to be answered is going to be, can we set now a higher high, right? So that's the problem we've had here moving down in the stock market has been lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. Now, can we go in and can we get ourselves a higher high? The bears will certainly do a victory lap for any type of pull down that happens in here. But I think that the main thing to be watching for is, can we set a higher high, at least a first series of higher highs in here? Just because we're moving up doesn't mean we're going straight up. We should all know that by now. The nice thing to see over there was that the NASDAQ was actually already able to do it. So the NASDAQ did set a new higher high in here after also having the same fate. So there's a lot of bouncing around in this video, but the thing is, for Bitcoin, continuation, we're above that 50-day moving average. We're above the 200-week moving average. Still 2 days left in the week. It's going to be seeing if we can get above it and stay above it and continue higher. And fingers crossed that we do. And if we do, then hey man, you'll see me over there on Twitter hooting and hollering. I got really, really close to posting this meme over there on Twitter throughout the weekend, but I did not want to jinx it. But my goodness, I would love to post this on Twitter one day. It was so close. I wanted to do it, but I didn't do it because I'm not going to jinx this. There's still some stuff up ahead of us, but hopefully throughout the weekend we can crack through and catch up with the stock market. But with this video already being all over the place at this point, it's a Friday. Why not just throw in a video of me playing the drums? As the guys told you, I started taking drum lessons like a month ago. So, hey, here we go. Here's where we're at so far. Not very good. I'm brand new. But hey, man, progress, right? Hold myself accountable. Here's the blockchain backer rock and roller. And then to make this video even more random and more all over the place, my wife came home with like a 3.5 gallon fish tank that she got for free on the internet. We got some fish and like we put it in there, but the tank like wasn't very good and like half the fish died. This was on like Tuesday. And then, all the family wants to make sure all the other fish survive. So then I get suckered into having to buy a 13.5 gallon fish tank. And so now I have a fish tank and I have fish this week. And that's been like the huge thing going on in the backer household is we now have a fish tank with fish. So wish me luck with my new fish. Wish me luck with improving on my drums. And you know what? I wish all of us luck to see that Bitcoin can get there above 24,300 with a convincing break and not get rejected from that level. But that's what we're watching for throughout the weekend. That would be kind of a celebratory moment for me. I'd be pretty excited to see that happen. Right now, we're still right underneath it. But catching up to that stock market, be right there around 30K. We'll see how things go. Of course, we'll come over here on Twitter if anything huge happens. I won't be able to post a video this weekend. Last weekend, I was able to put one out on Sunday. This weekend, I just won't be. I will be gone all day tomorrow. And then I have things going on Sunday. So I just won't be able to post videos, but I'll be checking over here on Twitter. So follow me over here on Twitter at BCBacker. Otherwise, I hope that you guys have a wonderful weekend. Fingers crossed for the market to do well throughout the weekend. And that'll be it. I want to thank you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.